These are our AUK routers. AUK is our own brand, and what we have here is two of our 2400 watt motors. That's 2400 watt power in, 1800 out, which is a pretty damn powerful router. These are our latest versions that we've just introduced, and these both now have an ER20 collet. So quite an unusual collet. This is a collet that really was from engineering that we've now brought into woodworking. So when we have a collet normally for a router, we tend to have maybe 4 or 6 slots in here to actually grip hold of the cutter. This one though is slotted from the top and from the bottom, which means it gives you much better holding power over your router cutter and reduces the amount of run out or wobble that you can get on a cutter. Also, because the amount of slots on them, this 1/2 inch ER20 can be used either for a 1/2 inch cutter or will crush down to also hold a 12mm cutter. When we use this, we must make sure that it is fully clipped into the nut. When it's clipped into the nut, then it can be screwed onto the router and then you can put your cutter in. If it wasn't clipped into the nut, you would find your router cutter will get stuck in the collet and you wouldn't be able to release it. That is the same with any collet out there on the market. The other one that we have is a 1/4 inch that will squeeze down to a 6mm cutter. The two different routers we have here are basically the same, apart from this one, speed-wise, we will control on the bottom of the router. So we have an on-off button and speed control. It's also then pre-wired to an NVR box. Latest regulation is that routers should be pre-wired or have an NVR switch on them. Basically an NVR switch means if you have a power cut, the router can't turn back on again. But in practical terms, for a router table, which is where these are used, it means you can have this bolted to your bench and we can now turn the router on and off and control it completely from a remote switch. The other router is the same power, but this one, not only can we isolate the machine, flip that out on a spring to pop it out, now means we can turn it on or off. We can also adjust the power and the speed from this remote switch rather than delving underneath the router. Each of the routers comes with a UK plug, so for our European or other customers, they can buy it with this and then put it into an adapter which they can buy in their local country. So power-wise, this is running off 230 volts, so it'll be okay in the UK, in Europe, South Africa, Australia, a lot of the old colonial countries. What we also have is a pair of spanners. So the pair of spanners are cranked, which means when this is in a router table and it's lifted up, actually the cutter and the collet and nut will basically be above the table and we can actually adjust it with the spanners. Also in the package comes a pair of spare brushes, just in case you use it a hell of a lot and 2 or 3 years down the line you want to change them over, we've got already in the box there for you. The AUK router is designed to sit into JessEm and Incra router lifts. The standard or larger size router motor that can fit into these lifts is 4 1/4 inches or 106mm, and that's the body size of our AUK router. To put him in, just loosen off Allen key down here, put this into the right position and tighten him back up, and they come out of the box ready for our size of router. I'll just withdraw this one out so we can talk about the router lifts. Both the JessEm and the Incra lift have these fixing shoes. These are about 50mm tall, all 4 of them, so they can really very securely hold our router in there. Our router is that 4 1/4 inch diameter, but if you were to have a smaller diameter router, round-bodied router, then you can adjust these shoes so you can make the diameter of this smaller to fit that router, and then also still use the tightening up of the cramping mechanism to hold them into place. Both the Incra and the JessEm underneath here are the same configuration. As we turn him over and look at the top of the router plate, slight differences between the JessEm and the Incra. Both of them, what they have in common is that they can both be adjusted height-wise from above the table using the winder handle. So all adjustments of your router will happen from above your table very, very easily. They also have metric scales on them, so we can adjust them 1/10 of a millimetre at a time. And they also then have a cam lock, so we can lock it off when you're at your correct height position. The size of the plates are both exactly the same, so they will fit into our standard Incra, JessEm and AUK router tabletops. They are both aluminium at 9.5 to 10 millimeters thick, 3/8 of an inch. The major difference comes in for these two router lifts is which kind of plate mechanism goes into the top of the router. So when we're putting the cutter in, depending on the size of the cutter, we want to have a small gap around the router cutter to make it as safe as possible. So you'll have a different size insert rings that you can fix into the plate. So these ones are a phenolic material. What you can do with these is put them in and you have a adjuster that comes with the router so you can spin it into position. The advantage of these is you can actually mould them and cut them to the exact size of your router bit if you wanted to, so you have absolutely zero clearance. On the Incra lift, it's a magna plate system, which means you have 4 magnets set into the top of the router lift. Each of these works with a little tiny Allen key. Underneath the magnet actually is an O-ring, and you can tighten the Allen key down, which compresses the O-ring or brings it back up again, which means you can get your plate, which sits on the magnets, absolutely dead flush with the router tabletop. So not only can you level the plate very accurately using the little Allen key to level up the steel to the aluminium, you can also use little grub screws around the outside of the plate to get the plate totally level with your router tabletop. The standard router lift comes with these solid plates, but if you were to use this router lift in an Incra clean sweep box, which is under table dust extraction, then you'd want to be using one of these insert rings. What this does, when the router's in there and we're doing some routing work, the dust extraction pulls from underneath and actually removes any dust through the router extraction box, which is very, very useful. Also, if you do have a clean sweep box, because your router will be enclosed in the box, it's going to be very difficult to get in there, turn it on and off and make any speed adjustments, which is where, again, the NVR, particularly the NVR with the remote speed control, really comes into itself, because we can do all the controls to the router from outside of the clean sweep box. For more information on our routers and our router lifts, visit us at woodworkersworkshop.co.uk. We also sell to over 220 countries around the world, direct shipping from us, all duties and taxes paid. And be sure to check us out on social media.